Okay, guys, so in today's episode, I talked to Danny Grigsby, who is an active duty U.S. Marine and has competed for the last 10 years in both the 242 and 270 pound weight classes. He has best lifts of a 777 pound squat, 352.5 kg, 458 pound bench, 207.5 kg, and a 1,074 pound deadlift, all of these done in competition. He's a crazy strong lifter. He's got a crazy physique. But what makes this episode more unique is we kind of dive into things outside of his lifting as far as his mindset, who he is as a person, what he's done and to get to this point to be so successful. And it's just a really fun episode overall. So I think y'all are really going to like it.
What's up,
Hey
buddy?
Pete. Hey,
How are you, man?
I'm doing good, bro. It's great to finally have a chat with you, man.
Yes, sir. It's been a long time coming. I know we've gone back and forth, talked a little bit, and it just finally making it happen here. So,
Yeah.
what's new with you?
So I'm gonna right now I'm just in the off season, but I'm gonna do the pro again in October and just work. I'm still in the Marines. I'm getting out October actually, so I'm getting out the week before the meet, and then after I'm gonna start coaching just on a small scale because luckily I'm hoping to get as close to 100% VA rating. I know I'm at least at probably 80% right now because if you don't, you know how the VA rating works for military members.
No,
It's
I'm not familiar with that.
so basically it's like throughout whether you do 4 years or a full 20, retirement, you go to medical, they document your injuries that you've had throughout your career, and then you have a physician. There's like a board or something, but whatever your percent, so 100% is 4,000. Uh, if I get 80 or 90%, that'd be like 2,800 or 3,200, something like that. You get that every month for the rest of your life. So it's pretty clutch. So I'm hoping to get. I definitely had enough injuries, but a lot of times the struggle is like getting it documented, like having certain things documented. Because if you say oh, I have a fucked up knee, but if you didn't get, I don't want to say an X-ray, but like you need to have it backed up in your medical record, and then you'll get rewarded a percentage towards your VA claim. It's basically once you get out, it's like medically. I don't say it's like you're medically retired, but a lot of people get 100% because if I get close to 4K, then I'm making 4K a month whether I do anything or not, and then I'll start off between 10 to 20. I don't want a ton of clients at first, just to get my. I kind of want to start it in the next few months, but then transitioning out of the military, I'm gonna have a lot of stuff to go and do. So I'll probably just wait till after. But yeah, I'm kind of excited for that, just to be in a just to not mainly the running, man. I don't run much anymore because I'm with the funeral detail team in Washington D.C. right now with the Marines. I'm a plumber. I'm technically a plumber in the Marines, but my first 4 years I was stationed at Camp Pendleton, which is Southern California, Oceanside. It's like 40 minutes north of San Diego. And then in 2020, right before something happened, that's when I came to the East Coast. So I've been in DC 2.5 years now. I enjoy it to some extent. I just hate the trap. Like you can say that about any major city, but the bridge you take going out of DC, there's only one real way to get out. So like you're destined to, like, it doesn't even matter. It could be like 7 to 9 a.m., 11 to 2 p.m., 5 to 8, 7, 8 p.m. It's always traffic. Like the only time you will not hit traffic is if you just are in the most random time of the day when who's going to wake up at 3 a.m. just to miss traffic, right? So everyone wakes up at normalish hours. You're going to be guaranteed to hit some gridlock, you know?
Well, you said you're looking forward to not having to run anymore, or is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, my body's just, it's mainly my ankles, man. Luckily, you don't really need, I mean, you do need ankles in powerlifting, kind of. Like, you got to have enough mobility in your ankles. But, because now, I mean, I'm 270 right now. So it's not, I don't run with the funeral detail team. We have to do the fitness test every year, but I run once a week on my own just to make sure I still got it. Because as heavy as I am now, it just feels like I'm running with ankle weights. Like after like a half mile, it doesn't matter how much I train. It just the lactic acid just builds up quickly in my legs. Obviously, I mean, common sense, at 5'11", 270, you probably shouldn't be running, But it's like it is what it is because I didn't want to lose weight to prepare for my run test, because I'm trying to get a good off season in. And my bench right now, God, like I've been doing Duffalo bench the last 2 weeks to start this block off. It's probably the body weight increase because all prep I was 260. A lot of people were confused. I wasn't my normal weight that I was. Normally I'm high 260s during a meet prep, but to make 242, I knew it probably wasn't a good idea to be like 268, you know? So I dieted. I was around 260 body weight the whole prep. Then after the meet, I didn't forcibly try to bulk, but I've been 10 pounds heavier ever since. So not mad about it, but it just sucks for cardio, you know?
Yeah. So what made you, decide to go down to 242? Were you just trying to chase that record?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I knew the deadlift would most likely be there unless I never did early on in my career. I did 6 to 8 pound cuts, nothing crazy. This was, by the way, can you hear me just fine with the connection, or is it kind of?
You're perfect.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. My service here in the barracks is pretty trash because that's military. They give you the most shittiest Wi-Fi imaginable, so
Yeah.
I never really know. But yeah. So I was honest with myself. Like, if I was going to do this, I'd rather play it safe and be lighter. Even though there's IVs and like Johnny Coffin said on the podcast, there's a lot of things you can do to help. But if I've never done a 20+ pound weight cut, I don't want to make it any harder than it has to be. So the cut went pretty smooth. I mean, the week of the meet, I lowered carbs. I cut 4 or 5 days out, I started lowering carbs, water loaded. I went from 260 to 253 off the water load alone, and probably the carbs too. So Thursday, I was sitting at like 253-ish, and then I cut the sauna, went in the sauna. I had one of those ones you sit in where your head's not covered. Probably for the best, because I feel like you could probably cut more weight in a sit-in sauna. But then the problem is you can start cooking in your head. And once you get dizzy, and that's when the delirious health things can happen, I feel. With a chair sauna, you don't lose as much weight as quickly, but it's safer. So I went from 253 to 244 in like 4 hours, like 30 minutes on, 10 minutes off. So honestly, I'll do it again just one more time because it wasn't fun. Usually the week of the meet, I'm relaxing. I'm eating not what I want, but I'm eating my normal diet. But there's a lot that goes into cutting for meat. People don't realize till you actually do it. Because I did want to break the total, but squat and bench, I just didn't. Squat, I fucked up on my second. I hate how in monoliths you kind of have to be more underneath the rack. Like I've been walking out my squats all prep, and then I thought I had the bright idea of, oh well, I'll just show up to the meet and I'll figure out the mono. And I'll just get adjusted warming up because they had models in the warm up room. And yeah, I didn't. It didn't go very well. I had a small PR of 777 pounds on my second, or on my third. I took it on the second, but I pitched forward. I felt like I was about to fall on my face because I unwrapped it and I was already like tipping, You ever had that happen to you?
Oh yeah, if you're on the right spot.
And the shitty part is, I think the one thing the cut did affect is like when I missed my second squat, it took a lot out of it. Like my CNS instantly started dropping. I was like, fuck, I'm already feeling like so. I retook the third and got it, but I already felt, because I've heard people say that before, is like, obviously you could be potentially more depleted and have cramps when you cut excess amount of weight. But it's like, if you miss attempts, I think it takes more out of you. And I normally don't miss very many attempts, especially on squat. So I wanted to squat 800, but since I biffed on my second attempt, I just retook it, because I didn't have the confidence. Some people do, and next time I probably will, but it was my first time ever having that happen. So I was like, it's a PR regardless. I'm just going to retake it. So I got the 777. And on bench, I got 435 for my opener. And then I had this problem, and I know now why, but it was kind of like hit and miss sometimes. Anything over like 440, I get to my chest, and I just can't control it. It starts sinking. So then my press commands become like, I had an insane, like a 2-second press command on my second. So I lost tension and just failed it. The 462, I didn't even retake it because I knew I'm like, if I get another press command like this, because I can't keep it. A lot of it is chest up, but I'm realizing now. So I'm a feet up, I'm a toes up kind of position on bench. But the problem is if you tuck your feet under too much, you can't really press into your upper back to keep that to keep yourself tight. Because I was digging my feet too far underneath me, so I unrack. I have a slightly better arch, which I thought was good. But then I had no tightness. In the last few weeks, I've brought my feet back some so that I can actually push my heels down. They're not actually going to touch the ground, but actually push into myself. But yeah, and then deads, I was going to do 1,050 to 1,060, but at that point I knew the total was not. I was hoping to be north of 2,300, and since I wasn't, I was like, I opened with 986, and then I just went 1,000. I believe it was 1,008. 1,005 or 1,008, then 1,030. Just two weights I knew would secure me all times. Because I hate being known as a deadlift guy at this point. I mean, I'm top 2 all time in 2 different weight classes in total. But, you know, they say second is first place loser. So, like, you know, that cliche ass quote. So I really am hoping at the pro, I'll get my first total all time record, you know. So
What's your ultimate goal in powerlifting? Where are you trying to take this?
I kind of just take it beat by beat. I've never really, well, I do plan years in advance. Like obviously I want to pull 500, which I feel like I will do at the pro. But it's kind of just like, it's kind of like the Ed Cohen philosophy where I'm just doing what I can. I'm building like every prep and every offseason. I'm like, okay, let me try to slightly improve. And then those slow gradual increases. Because the last few years, that's all I've really done is I'm just trying to be a slightly better every offseason. I'm trying to slightly get some PRs on triples, fours, fives, whatever. But I don't really put a set goal. Well, I have goals going into a prep, right? Like for this meet, I want a total 2,400. I want to squat 820, bench around 490, and pull 1,100. So I have goals for the meet or two I have for whatever year I'm in. But I don't really have 3 to 5 year goals. I don't know. I've never really kind of been – because here's the thing is like you never know where you'll be, and then you adjust goals in time, right? Because I remember when I started powerlifting, my lifetime goals in 2013 was to squat 800, bench 500, and deadlift 800. Because at the time, a 2K total was insane regardless of weight class, you know, of being completely elite. So obviously those goals have changed. I still have – it's just dumb because I've just obliterated my deadlift goal, but my squat and bench I still haven't done yet. So I still got work to do on those.
Yeah, I mean, you've been competing for almost 10 years now, or over 10 years. And one thing I've seen with the most successful guys is they're not necessarily looking at things from that long-term standpoint of what are my goals 5 years down the road. They're just chipping away, and they just take it year by year and continue to push that total higher. And that's what leads to PRs. I mean, don't you think that what's your mindset been like to achieve this kind of success? Is there anything in particular that you do to be this successful? What would you say? What's going on inside your brain that has led you to this point?
I think this is what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of what makes it. This is for any sport, not just powerlifting. A lot of times, people who become great at something, I think it's more. How do you say, like psychological? Because when I was young, I did football, basketball, track and field, and baseball growing up, all like 6 to 8 years apiece. So I did a lot of different sports. I competed a lot in different things. And some people just know how to perform when it matters, like the mental, the sports psychology of it. Because I think a lot of people, they can do certain things in training, but I love to compete. Like I'm not saying I hate training, but a lot of times in training, I'm like going through the motions. I do what I have to do. But it's like, I know when it's time to compete, everything will come together. And I have that mindset that I'll always be my best when it matters most. I think that's kind of, because a lot of times I've had iffy preps or, this isn't going well. But I just get so excited when I know, like, training to me, no matter how hard you try, you can never replicate a competition in a training environment. It's really hard for me. Like, the adrenaline, the fight or flight you get, the excitement, at least for me, because I've always been like that in all the sports I did. Like I do good in practice, but I just always had this switch. Like I go to compete, and all of a sudden it would just click and come together. I think of something else I do is I visualize more so later on in a prep. I still do it several times a week. But it's like a lot of people get mentally psyched out because they let the moment get the best of them. And I learned from an early age the importance of not only being physically but also mentally prepared. Because, like, for the meet I just did, we did it in a Metroflex gym in Marietta, California. That was where this WRPF meet was at. like the week before I traveled, I went online, I went on Google, like I found a bunch of pictures online of what the gym looked like outside, inside, where I'm going to warm up at. I was looking at those pictures, and then I just like closed my eyes and I started imagining myself like I'm in there, I'm warming up, I'm squatting, I'm benching, etc. So then, like when I went there, I did the same thing for the pro too. Like a couple days before I went to the venue, and I just kind of mapped everything out in my mind. So then I go there, and I'm already mentally. I feel like I'm already been there, because you like visualize yourself in that environment, or you visualize yourself lifting, or just where you're going to be. So that's something that's helped me a lot, and I think I've gotten good at it. And it's not to say I'm not saying you could just not do shit and just visualize. That's bullshit. I'm not. You got to train hard. You got to do all these things. But what separates the people in that top 1%, a lot of times it's mental. Could you ever watch the Olympics or any high level sporting event? They're all freaking studs. Everybody's a genetic freak. Everybody has the potential to win a gold medal on the given day, right? Depending on how they perform, and a lot of this I feel like is mental. So.
Now, do you think the Marines have influenced your work ethic? How has that kind of crossed over to powerlifting?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I feel like even before the Marines, I was at least a tad bit regimented. Like I always woke up at a decent, like I never really slept in much. But yeah, the Marines, boot camp was cool. Like I enjoyed boot camp, even though it sucks at first because you're thrown away from where you're from. Then you got to wear all these greens and like all this basic uniform. But I love the structure. I've always loved structure in my life or in training and whatnot. I definitely think it's helped with grit and toughness a little bit. Because a lot of times I don't get fazed by things because I've been in so many situations before where I've experienced certain things. So obviously it's hilarious because looking back, it's like of all the branches, like me going in, and I started powerlifting 2 years for the Marines, but I really got caught up in the hype of like, the few, the proud, the Marines, their slogan, because I went to originally I wanted to go Army, and then I went to the recruiting office, and the Army guy, he was just like almost too laid back. He was just smoking and joking, and he didn't really seem to care that I came in to talk to him. Because think about it, Army's the biggest branch. They get like everybody wants to go to the Army. It's the biggest, most popular branch, especially in movies and all this other stuff. Well, I met with the Marine recruiter. He showed me respect. He was in his uniform. He looked more well dressed. So those kind of things caught my eye. But yeah, all the running. My first 2 years, I used to run a lot more, and I'm surprised I don't. I mean, I've tweaked, muscles here and there. Like I've tweaked my quad a few times, like pulled it, not like torn it or anything. But I haven't had any horrible injuries, in due part because I've always done linear periodization for the most part until the last few years. But I was kind of doing RPE even back then because, I ran 3 miles this morning. I worked all day, and I have to squat tonight. I was supposed to do this weight, but I knew warming up, I'm like, that's not going to happen. So I would do what I could. I'm supposed to squat 650. Well, I'm going to do 550 and for set of 3 or whatever, because that's all I can do without my body hurting because I ran or I hiked or I just had a long work day. So I kind of learned to like regulate my body on any given day to know what's there because I knew I was going to hurt myself. I'm like, if I'm trying to like push certain weights and I'm running and doing all this stuff, that's why my first few years I didn't improve much because I joined the Marines. My first few years, the workload and the tempo of the Marines was a lot. And plus running 8 to 10 miles a week, it was just tough, but obviously I did it to myself. I'm the one who I signed on the dotted line. No one put a gun to my head and said you had to join the Marines. So, but in the process, the one thing I will say is since I couldn't train as heavy as I wanted to most of the time, what did I do? I played around with technique. I played around with setup. I played around with, my grip length or my feet setup and stuff like that. So I just got a lot of practice just figuring out what works for me, and all the lifts and et cetera. And that paid dividends because then in 2019 to 2020, when my circumstances changed and I could recover better and I wasn't running as much, my lift started blowing up and I had good enough technique and I knew how my body operated in certain ways because I couldn't train very heavy, like on an actual program. I just figured out other ways I could get better, other things I could improve on since I wasn't lifting heavy at the time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you've done a lot of crazy feats and everything. What would you say is the most difficult thing that you've done? Not
Um,
like, I know the deadlift stands out, but and that's obviously
yeah,
like insane. But I mean, personally for you, like, what is the most difficult moment you've gone through, whether it's in the Marines or lifting or anything else?
I would say so. Like I said previously, right now we're called the world famous Body Bearers. It's the funeral detail team for the Marine Corps. We do casket and cremation funerals at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. The school for that was probably the hardest thing. I mean, but like I said, lifting lifting can be tough. Lifting is obviously stressful and physically demanding. Boot camp, okay, boot camp was tough. Like I said, I went into boot camp. I'm not to brag. I was already a stud going into boot camp. Like my 3-4 months before boot camp, I stopped lifting weights. All I did was run and do calisthenics for 4 months straight. So I was already in great shape. So it wasn't really a physical shock for me. But in July 2020, when I came to DC, it's called Ceremonial Drill School, our school for the funeral detail team. That was the toughest shit I've ever done. Cause like in the biggest mind fuck about the school is like there's no graduation date, so it's all dependent on you and your progress. So it's not like most schools are like, oh, you show up this day, you're going to graduate. When your end date is. This is very physically and mentally stressful because they never our warm up every day. So we usually drill at 6 or 7 a.m. Our warm up is so we're in a musty ass parking garage. We're several levels below the barracks where we train. It gets really hot in the summer and it gets really cold in the winter because whatever temperature it is, it's just trapped down there. We do 3 sets of 20 pull-ups and 3 sets of 20 bicep curls with a 35 on each side, 150 pounds. And in between each set, we're running probably, we go to the other end of the park. It's probably 30, 40. So we're running 50 to 60 yards. It's basically like a CrossFit workout. You do a set of pull-ups, you run, you come back, you do another set. Then you do the same thing for bicep curls 3 times. And then we do stuff like we'll get plates, do farmer's carries. I've done that for hundreds of yards straight before. Uh, my favorite, the thing I love most because it was such a good workout, but it was so painful, was pushing the prowler. And they knew I loved and hated that, so they always made me push the prowler with a bunch of weights on it. Because the reason the training is so hard is because when we do funerals at Arlington, we're very stoic. We're not allowed to make noises. We're not allowed to move. We're trying to look as almost like a statue. Like we're not grimacing. We're not just like twitching, and because that's distracting to the people watching the funeral, right? Like if you're watching a funeral and I'm just here shaking on the flag and I just can't control myself because I'm smoked from the carrier, just it's hot outside. You're not even going to pay attention to the funeral. You're just going to look at me because I'm like a fish out of water. So we make it harder down there. It's like with anything, right? You make the training almost harder than the actual feat that you're doing, so that when we go to Arlington, we already are mentally and physically ready because we're getting smoked down there physically and mentally. Our bearings tested. Like we're doing all these exercises. We got to breathe through our nose, not through our mouth. Just once again, we're doing all these little things, and that was hard for me because lifting weights to me is fun, but it's not like I don't consider it really that challenging. Like I've always loved lifting weights, but I don't like running. I mean, pull-ups are okay, but doing things you don't like, that instills discipline and like all that other stuff, Like lifting to me has never been something you've had to force me to do. Lifting to me is more like a hobby because I would do it whether I powerlifted or not. So my philosophy with this school, I mean, it taught me a lot about myself because I had to dig deep. Especially like the most popular thing is we get tendonitis all throughout our elbow into this. I don't know what you call this because we're doing hundreds of curls every day and pull ups and stuff. It's not a matter of if or when you're gonna get tendonitis and sometimes bicep soreness. So stuff like that sucked. But then during that time I didn't powerlift. So for basically almost a year I still squatted and benched, but just very, very light because the training would beat me up. I didn't deadlift for a whole year. And when I came back to actually powerlifting training in 2021, it felt so much easier. Because it's like I went from doing like CrossFit stuff to now, while I'm still lifting weights, but it's moderate weightlifting and this CrossFit style workouts, to now it's like I don't complain if I have to do sets of 5 or 7. It kind of changed my mind about, because early on in powerlifting, I used to only do minimal reps. I'd be like, I'm doing a top set of 1 to 3 reps and maybe one back down, and that's it. I don't need to do any more, or I was just lazy. And after that, and I'm not saying now I do a fuck ton of volume, but I do a moderate. Like for deadlift, I'll do a set of 1 to 3 reps, and then I do 3 back down sets, usually 5 to 7 reps. Sometimes lighter. If it's towards the meet, it'll be less volume. It'll be sets of 2 to 3 probably. But yeah, I would say the ceremonial drill school CDS. That's definitely, it's cool because when you make your keep on the team, everybody respects you because they know, okay, you have what it takes because you went through this school, you didn't quit, you never gave up, and it's something I'll look back on even when I leave the Marines. I'll always be proud of that, being a part of what I'm with now. So,
Yeah, I kind of figured the Marines made powerlifting probably seem really easy and fun by comparison. It probably paled in comparison to the difficulties that you went through in the training at boot camp over the years. Now, you were talking about these crazy sets of curls and the repetitive pull-ups and all that. Is that kind of partially what built your physique as far as you're a pretty jacked guy. Would you say that this super high rep schemes on a frequent basis with crazy hypertrophy, is that what led to this crazy physique you have now?
So definitely, I'll scroll back a little bit. So early on, when I was in middle school and high school, I feel like I've always been blessed with pretty good legs. Like I did a lot of lunges, body weight squats. So I had the legs from the jump. I've always had, like, when people ask me about legs, I'm just honest with them. I'm like, I can tell you the exercises, but you can't, unless you get transported in my body, my genetics, you're probably not going to respond like I do. Because I've never really trained legs that hard because it just came natural to me. But upper body, definitely the pull-ups. Yeah, pull-ups. And I noticed too when I came back to powerlifting, all the pull-ups I did, it helped a lot. Just overall, I say pull-ups, because a lot of times in the Marines we always do workouts with pull-ups and then we go on runs and stuff. But a lot of it is frequency, because early on, one thing I regret is my first 5-6 years of powerlifting, I never benched I'd only bench like once a week, maybe sometimes twice a week. And looking back now, it's like, obviously I'm not saying bench 5 times a week, but 2 to 3 is like what most people should be doing, But, and I'm not going to say, oh, back then we didn't know any better, but now there's so much resources. It's so easy, or you just find a coach. There's a million of them, and most of them are probably going to not have you just bench once a week. But the more frequency I started doing with all my upper body muscles, it definitely, like you said, it helped chisel me out more. And then just a lot of it's the diet. Like I've been pretty good. I've basically done a vertical diet the last 6-7 years. Now, not to a T. The last year, I've officially done the actual vertical diet. But I've always predominantly ate red meat, rice, potatoes, just some veggies like spinach and carrots and bell peppers, things like that. And then I'll have shakes. When I'm out at Arlington and I can't make my food, I'll have a couple scoops of whey protein, some rice cakes, and peanut butter. So I make do with stuff like that. But I think the consistency over a long period of time, like you said, that's what separates a lot of people. Because when I started powerlifting, I really didn't think I'd ever I just did it because it was fun and it gave me a goal, and I just stopped doing football. And now I needed some kind of purpose in the gym. But because I never really had some crazy goals, my first 4 or 5 years, I really never thought I'd break a record or anything. I just did it because I wanted to push myself. So I just slowly, like I said, my diet, my training, it just kept slowly building up. But I wasn't in a rush to get anywhere. Because that's the thing is when people set these monumental goals, like you just deadlift 600, I'm going to deadlift 700 by the end of next year. You're going to try to rush the process in a way, And it's good to have huge goals, but you kind of got to backtrack, have goals along the way, not just here's one crazy goal that's out of left field. Let me just shoot towards. I mean, you're probably going to get injured, or you're going to try to expedite things too quickly, in my experience. Because the one thing that is kind of different about powerlifting now is a lot of times there's a lot of younger lifters who are very successful. But I remember back in 2013-14, it was kind of expected you wouldn't get good till your 30s probably. So everyone was like, yeah, for 8 to 10 years, I'll pay my dues and built up my base and everything. And that was my mindset. is when I said I wanted a total 2K for my lifetime goals, I was 19 years old, and I told myself by 30 years old I want a total 2K. I was willing to train for over a decade just to reach a 2K total, and I was cool with that because I was like, well, I'm not in a rush, I could do this into my mid 30s potentially. So and now the shift is like, oh, in 2 years I want to be at a very high level, which some people, there's been Larry Wheels and some people who have done that, but I think and I'm not saying just keep it very safe and moderate, but there's a fine line, like you want to, if you progress too quickly, a lot of times people get injured because you can't get too strong too fast, because then your tendons and ligaments and all these things are probably not going to support all that strength you're improving on,
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, because from what I've seen, the lifters who do the best over time, who get the strongest, get to the top of the sport, are those who enjoy the journey rather than just looking at the end goal. So many guys come up now and they have this major end goal, and that's all they can focus on. But it's guys like you who just kind of chip away at it and enjoy the journey. You guys are the ones who actually hit the crazy numbers. So if you don't kind of stop and smell the roses and just enjoy the process, and take it for what it's worth, then you're not probably going to get to that peak, that upper level. So that's a really good point. Now,
yeah, definitely. All right, go on.
No, you can expand on that.
Yeah, that's one thing I've gotten better at, because it's very easy to have tunnel vision and just you do a meet and then it's like, fuck, so what do I do next? Okay, this is the next off season. Then this is the next meet prep. But yeah, because I remember my first few times I broke world records, I didn't really stop to really appreciate it, because I was just like, okay, now it's on to the next one. But like you said, because in 2020, when I broke my first two, it wasn't even like a day or two after. I was just already like, okay, so what am I like? Well, by that time, I didn't want to be known as the guy who only did it once. So I was already plotting, what am I going to do to get to 1,000 or get to 980 or whatever. But yeah, it's so important to appreciate all those small or big wins, because when it's all said and done, man, you can't rewind back time. You got to enjoy your accomplishments while you're still doing them. Because like I said, like I know, as crazy as some of the stuff I'm doing, in 5, 10, 15 years, someone's going to surpass it. I'm not saying that may or may not happen, but I mean, if people surpass Ed Cohen, even though it took 30 plus years, even the greats, eventually your numbers are going to get passed. But it's about what you embody and how you how do I say this, and how you treat other people. Because I don't see myself as this dude like, oh, I'm so much better than everyone. Like I'm very similar to a lot of people. I'm just very consistent. I probably, I have the genetics involved most definitely, but I don't let it get to my head, But it's important to appreciate all the little things you have, definitely.
So have you had like many meets where you hit these crazy numbers, and at the end of the meet, you're kind of like, wow, that's it. I'm kind of like, you must feel underwhelmed with the, finality of the goal. You hit the goal and you're a little underwhelmed at the end, where you're just like, oh man, I thought I'd feel more excited about it. That's happened to you quite a bit?
Yeah, so I had to have people calm me down and talk to me after this last meet, because at first I was like, I fucking shit the bed. I didn't total 2,300 plus pounds. I only broke the deadlift record twice, and I didn't get the total. And then my buddy's like, but you got second all time at 242. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm definitely overreacting. Like this was still, that's the problem with a lot of us, is when we're at the high level, we have these really high expectations, and it's better to have high and then barely drop low, because it's like you shoot for the stars, you aim on the moon kind of thing. But yeah, after a few days, I was like, okay, I didn't do that bad, but in the moment, I was so set on trying to get the total and the deadlift, and I only got the deadlift, and I was like, this is a fucking shit show. This meet sucks, But yeah, shortly after, I was like, okay, this was a good meet. There's still plenty of things to take away from this. But that's so hard for me sometimes, when you have that mindset where you have all these expectations and you don't want to come short on any of them. And if you come short, even in the slightest way, you just kind of look at yourself like, oh, this is not it, But yeah, it was so funny, because I was like, oh, I got second all time. Okay, that's not a bad day. Yeah.
Does it always feel like you're pushing that boulder up the mountain to where it's never enough? The number's never going to be good enough, and you're always like, I got to get this next goal.
It just sucks, because you think once you hit a certain point, it's going to finally subside and you're just going to be like, okay, I'm good. But no, it's like, even when I pull 500, like I'd like to think I'd be cool just to stop after that. But it's probably just going to be like, oh, then it's going to be 510 or 515. Like that's the blessing and the curse of being an athlete, in a good way. It's like you want to always achieve for more, but that's going to be the tough thing because realistically, I want to go another 4 or 5 years, God willing, if I'm still healthy. But I don't want to be like a lot of people where they're past their prime and they're still competing and they're getting injured and they're not what they once were. Like I want to stop powerlifting once I realize, okay, I'm still on top. I might have a meet or two left in me, but why? What do I have to prove at this point? That's what I'm going to be like, okay. And hopefully I'm still pretty healthy by then, because I've seen, and I'm not going to name names, but I've seen a lot of the top guys from both the eras where it's like, it's usually once it's 34, 35, that's when the downturn starts. Because it's just, I don't know if it's father time or if it's just, 10, 20 years of repeated abuse to your joints. Something's going to give, right? Regardless of all the supplements and all this. You could do all the deep tissue and chiropractic work, but that's not going to stop the inevitable, when the time comes.
Yeah, it's both of those things. It's father time and it's the years under the bar. It comes for everybody. All the guys, everyone's going to face it. Now, for you, what's life going to look like after powerlifting? What do you have in mind?
So, like I said briefly, I'm going to get into. I want to try my hand at coaching. I don't know long term if it'll be what I do, but I feel like I'd enjoy it because I love helping people. I love helping people at the gym, and I've helped a lot of people in the past just with mainly stuff with deadlifting, but just programming and stuff. But obviously, I'm realistic in the fact that right now I work 50, 60 hours a week, and I could maybe take a small amount of people on, but I want the product to be good enough, because I don't want to go into it haphazardly and then develop a bad reputation because I'm not really able to deliver the kind of coaching I'd want to actually give. But once I get out of the Marines, if I'm able to do it full time, which is what I do, obviously, I'm confident I could be a pretty solid coach. And I know there's going to be, like learning curves of getting into a new career path. I've enjoyed the Marines. It's just, I think because of my goals in powerlifting, and honestly, everyone joins thinking they're going to do 20 years. Everyone wants the pension. Everybody everyone wants retirement. But obviously, my body, I don't think I could do another 12 years. I have to lose a ton of weight if I want to still powerlift. I can't do that. So I kind of came to a middle ground like a year or two ago. I was like, yeah, like I knew I was going to get out early on 2021 or so. So I've just been figuring out my plans since then. And I'm going to move back to, so I'm from Oregon originally. So my girlfriend, who I've been long distance relationship for over a year, she lives in Vancouver, Washington. So I'm going to move in with her. So I'm going to be living in Washington after I leave the Marines in October. And I miss the Northwest, but I don't miss all the rain. It rained like 60, 70% of the year. It rains Oregon, Washington area. Like I won't miss this place either, but like every place is a different kind of vibe,
Oh, so you'll be up there with Chris Bridgeford up in that area.
Yeah, she trains at his gym. She's at like
okay.
That gym is in Vancouver, Washington. Yeah, it's a good gym. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I've been there once. 2017, I was up in Vancouver, Washington with Chris and a few other guys. So that's pretty neat. I love it up there. Beautiful area. Now, one thing I want to ask about. So obviously, you work these funerals at Arlington. You've seen a lot of deaths. You've seen a lot of you've seen a lot of tough things. Like, how has that shaped your life as far as your outlook on life when you're always surrounded by people who have served, who have passed away, and you see the family members in mourning and this? Has that had like a profound impact on the outlook you have on life, how you live your life?
Yeah, I didn't realize when I got into it what the impact would be. It is tough some days because you're always surrounded by people who are mourning, basically, right? And a lot of times, it's like there's a lot of long days at Arlington, especially in the summer. We're doing 4, 5, 6 caskets a day. And that's the worst part is my shoulders got because we carry at shoulder level. We'll bring it lower if the casket's heavy enough. But a lot of times it's like, there's times where I almost want to complain because it's so tough, I'm just like, fuck, we're like from 8 a.m. to like 4 p.m. We're doing funerals all day. And it's like, we're kind of getting screwed because we're the funeral detail team. And we're at the mercy of the funeral director and the families, like we're just like sometimes they're late, sometimes they're early, sometimes like we get thrown curveballs and we got to go there right away. But what makes it worthwhile is knowing we're making a difference. Because a lot they don't show it at the time because, like I said, they're in their feelings because someone just died. But a lot of times we'll get thank you letters, and people sometimes after the funerals, people will come up to our bus, former Marines who served, or just people in the family. They're like, what, we really appreciate you guys because I can't imagine doing this, and we're thankful that you did what you did for our loved one. And one other thing too, and this is not to sound like I don't want this to sound depressing or anything, but like I used to never really think about death, and now that I'm surrounded by a lot, sometimes, and I'm not gonna say like I'm not trying to pitch this as like I'm thinking about it, but it's like my perception of death now is so different because I've done around 430 funerals at this point, and it's like I used to not really think about what would happen. I used to think, oh, you just die and whatever happens happens, but now it's just like a lot, and it's just random. Sometimes in my dreams, and sometimes it's just throughout some days, I'll just be like, you almost think, you've ever thought of that, Pete? Like, what happens when I die? Am I going to go up to heaven? Am I just going to be some spirit who just like hangs out in the foreground or somewhere? Like, I never used to think about stuff like that, but now I do. And I'm not bringing that up to make it sound like I'm going to kill myself or anything. I'm not saying that, but like, it definitely has changed my perception of what death is. Cause like I said, when you work at a cemetery, day in and day out. And that being said, I'm not like, I don't let it get to me, but yeah, it's like, it's definitely affected me in a lot of ways. Cause I mean, growing up, I went to a few funerals, it's not like I never went to a funeral before. But yeah, it's kind of like, there's a lot of cool things we've done though, burying former, representatives of Congress and stuff. But yeah, that's why, like I said earlier, I'm always going to be proud of what I did looking back here and just being a part of this because it definitely is pretty special. And compared to, no offense, being a plumber's cool. Like being a plumber, the Marines has its ups and downs. But I could definitely say doing this, I could definitely feel satisfied that I gave back in some way because a lot of military members the last 10, 12 years, not that I never wanted to get deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq. Thank God, luckily I've never had to do any of that. God bless those people. I didn't join to go to some war zone, But a lot of people nowadays are just like, oh, I don't deploy, so I'm not really doing anything. I'm just staying stateside. But doing this, I could definitely say I made a legit difference in the Marine Corps and in a lot of people's lives, So
I think too, though, when do you turn 30? You're 29 right now?
yeah, I turned 30 January of next year.
Okay, so you're kind of getting to that point, and I felt like when I turned 30 or was even, 29, I started to get a greater sense of my own mortality to where
oh yeah,
you almost feel invincible in your 20s, then you get to your 30s and you start to realize like this is a finite time we have here. So there's more of an urgency to live your life the way you want to when you realize like, hey, I'm not going to live forever. I'm not invincible. And even seeing people who pass away prematurely. Like I had a guy who I used to train with, and he was like 24 years old, driving home from work one night about 11:30 p.m. A tree had fallen across the interstate. He gets out of his car, and around this blind corner, someone comes along and takes him out and kills him.
God,
he just gotten married, and that like paints a picture of like you could go at any time. So you have to have a sense of urgency where you got to get the most out of life. Like most people probably don't know who this is, but Jesse Itzler, he like I think he's like a billionaire and everything. And he said he's like, if you look at life from the perspective of instead of, I may have 20 years left to spend with my parents, instead of looking at it like that, you look at it like, oh, I only see them twice a year. So I'm only going to have, 40 times that I'm ever going to see them again. Like that'll create a much greater sense of urgency to where you'll act on that. And that's one thing where it's just like, it's very, powerful as far as changing your outlook on life.
Yeah, no, and now that you bring that up too, this was also a part of me leaving the Marines, right? Is I've seen my family like once a year. I think one or two of those years I might have seen them twice a year. The last 8 years, and it's just crazy because I joined the Marines 20 going on 21, and now I'm 29, and now that I'm getting older, like you said, I'm 30 years old. I want to start a family. Have kids, stuff like that. And I want to see my actual family more, you know. And if they would understand if I stayed in, but I don't want to like let's say like you said something happens and they just one of them drops, you know, and knowing I could have been there for them or I had opportunities to be there, and you don't know when that is, you know, like you said, it could be 20 more times, 40 more times, but you don't have an all-seeing glass to where you know that, right? So being in Vancouver, it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours from where my parents live in Oregon. So I'll get to see them probably once a month now. I'm going to try to at least, you know. So stuff like that is what I'm really excited for, along with, you know, like I said, the coaching and stuff, getting a new career path that I'm pretty excited about too. Yeah, it's just, and that's the thing about, I know too, you know, when I get married in the future and I have a kid, that's why realistically, maybe even just 3 more years of powerlifting. Because like I said, once you have kids and stuff, I mean, I know plenty of people who do that, but there's a fine line to where if you want to be a high level at something, you got to be very selfish, you know. And I don't know if I could be that selfish if I had other priorities that I was neglecting just because I wanted to be, you know, a power lifter, you know, like I said, it's normalized a lot of times. Like I guess it'd be different if I was in the NBA making 20 million a year. It'd be normalized, right? Because you're set for life and you're making financial. But obviously that's not the case with powerlifting. So yeah, you don't think about all this stuff when you're in your early 20s because you're just like balls out to the wall. Fuck it, I'm gonna do what it takes. And then yeah, like you get to a point, it's different for everyone, but normally, yeah, me at 29, I'm already in that mindset now, you know, because 20 to 25, I was like, whatever, I don't care about certain things. But now those things come to fruition and in your rearview mirror because now these are things you're going to have to start thinking about more as you get older, you know?
Yeah, I mean, how often are you seeing your parents right now? Circling back to that.
Yeah, once a year. Like I said, I'm gonna go back to the Northwest in the summer, so I'll see them again when I go see my girlfriend again. Yeah, it's normally been once a year because a lot of times around the holidays it's busy and not everyone can take leave. And yeah, you know, like I said, I'm not too regrettive about it because, like I said, I know I don't want to say make up for it, but I'm about to move back to the Northwest. I'll be a lot closer, and we'll be able to meet up, and our relationship will be great from then on out. But they've understood, you know, because that's one of the tough things about being in the military, you know, is depending on where you're at, especially if you're overseas. It's like you're not seeing your family. Like if you're stationed in Japan or I don't know Europe or somewhere, a plane ticket's like $2, $3, $4,000. So I mean, that's pretty tough to try to like pay all that money just to go see them, you know, when you're overseas or something.
Yeah, well, how old are they roughly? Do you recall?
Oh man, my mom's
No, it's
gonna kill
hard.
me if she. Yeah, but yeah, they're in their 60s.
Yes,
Yeah, so
same with mine.
and
It's
they're very healthy too. It's crazy. Like this is a short interjection, but when I introduced my girlfriend to my parents, we went to my mom's house. This was like 4 or 5 months ago. Last time I was there, and we went on a walk. And it was my mom, my dad, me, and Hannah. They walked like 4 or 5 miles, and they weren't even winded. And this was me like I think I might have still been a meat prep, but I was big and my blood pressure was obviously a little high. So I was like, Mom, can we just turn around? Like, but they still walk a good amount. They're in good shape, you know, for their age, I feel like.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm in a similar circumstance where my parents live in Wisconsin. They're moving here next month, similar thing. And my sister's out in Colorado, and it's like, okay, my parents are also, you know, about 65. So let's say they lived to 90, it'd be like, well, you see them 25 more times your entire life. It's crazy to think like that. So it is good that, you know, you're going to move back out there and prioritize that. I'm happy for you as far as that goes. Um, it's just life changes, man. It comes at you quick. And
Yeah.
do you find it's tough with powerlifting to almost, because this is one thing that obviously looking back now, I can see it, and it's something you struggle with where it's like the pursuit of strength, getting the strongest possible in the things we do, is not necessarily in line with being healthy. So
Yeah.
now I'm almost trying to overcompensate for that and go the other way where I'm trying to be really healthy. I still lift hard and everything, but I'm trying to be super healthy and lose weight and all that. Does that ever, do you ever think about that where it's like, man, it's hard to balance that?
Yeah, like the last few years, I started doing blood work, usually just like twice a year, but I'm trying to do it every quarter now. And then I've taken it in the past, but I've gotten it from a website that's kind of sketchy, but I take telmisartan now. I want to get it through Merrick Health. So it's just like a prescription, because when you're 24, blood pressure isn't really a big deal to you. You're just like, whatever. But yeah, it's like and obviously I have the CPAP now for sleep. So that the CPAP has helped lower my blood pressure. It was pretty high at one point. And then I got the CPAP because of my neck, not in my weight, but more so I have a 20 and a half, 21-inch neck. So that's not like when people ask me, every once in a while people be like, what do you do for neck? And I'm like, you don't want a big neck, man. That's going to take years off your life. Because like when I went to the sleep doctor, I remember she told me like, if someone like you lived in like the early 1900s, you'd live to be like 40 years old, you die in your sleep basically. Because it's like if you're constantly like, because they said based off the sleep study, and my girlfriend said this one time too, for 4 to 5 seconds I wouldn't breathe. Like I would just choke myself. But it was weird. I'd never wake up. So I didn't know what was happening. But I was getting so lethargic. It's just like I'd wake up, and 2 to 3 hours after waking up, I needed to take a nap to function. I'd be sleeping on the bus, like on a beat up chair. And that's when I realized something was wrong because I'm like, I'm sleeping 8 hours. But in reality, I'm sleeping probably 3 hours because every 30 seconds, I'm like holding off my oxygen for God knows how long. So yeah, the CPAP's been great. And then, like I said, telmisartan. I know there's different types of, there's like olmesartan. There's like 5 or 6 different types of ARBs, I think. Am I right? Or
Correct.
there's slightly different ones. Obviously, that's depending on what the doctor thinks. But yeah, stuff like that. It's like as I've gotten older, and that's why too. Once I'm done with powerlifting, I'm definitely going to drop some weight. Probably get back down to like 220. 220 to 230 is when I was the best of both worlds. Like I was fit. I had good cardio. I was still pretty strong. Like I was still relatively strong with decent muscle mass. But yeah, when I got over like 255 to 260, that's when, like I said, these things come into play because I don't care if you're all muscle. It doesn't matter. Your heart and organs don't care if it's fat or muscle. It's still all that excess of weight is just causing your body to work more, So
Yeah, I can relate to that because people would always ask me, what do you do for neck? I'm like, I don't train my neck. I deadlift a lot and it builds my neck. And that was simple as that. And now I'm like, guys, you do not want a big neck. I'm trying to shrink my neck. I'm like, I want to shrink my neck. I don't want a big neck because the bigger your neck gets, the worse you sleep, the worse your sleep apnea. So this is where being lean pays off, like being really lean to where you don't have a lot of extra body fat, even because you have it around your throat, your neck, all these areas, and that's going to make sleep quality worse. So I 100% relate to that now that I'm kind of dialed back on the weights and such. So they're not so crazy, obviously. I can kind of do that. Now, I don't want to keep you too long. I want to finish up with a question I have of just as a general thing. It could be anything you can think of. If you could give other lifters who watch this any piece of advice to become the best that they could be, whether that's lifting or in general, what would that be? And it could be anything. Just things that you've taken away where you're really like, that's a major key. That's really important.
No, that's a good one, Pete. I'm trying
That's a tough question. I know.
Yeah. Let me think. This could go multiple different ways.
Well, it doesn't have to be one thing. If you have a few things where you're like, this is really important. This is one of the things that stuck with me. I'd say the thing we go back to, like for me, one thing I would say is going back to the conversation we had where it's seemingly the best guys are the guys who really appreciate the journey and they don't necessarily look way in advance. They just keep chipping away year by year. And you talked about that. And I think that's one of the things that really differentiates those who get to the top. So that would be one of the things I would say.
Yeah. I don't want to spin that off basically the same, but like, I think it's a blessing in disguise. Like I said, I'm not saying I never thought I could do great things, but because I just focus on, especially my first few years, I wasn't trying to go anywhere fast. Like any lifter who starts, like and this is the problem, right? Is social media nowadays, all they do is reward the young 17-year-old deadlift 600 at 140 pounds. Like it's they're just promoting younger and younger kids who are slightly above their age, and that puts pressure on people when they start. Like, oh, if I'm not deadlifting 700 at 20 years old, I'll never amount to anything. And I'm glad I didn't have the social media. It wasn't like it was in 2013 when I started. Because honestly, you got to give it like 4, 5, 6 years of consistently going to the gym, consistently having a decent diet to really start to hit stride. Because I didn't hit my stride till like my 7th year, you know. And if I would, based off of what I'd been a year into powerlifting, I would have given up if I was just set on, oh, am I capable of being the best in 2015? Obviously, I wasn't. You know, I was nowhere even close. But like, because I stuck with it and I persevered and I just continually chipped away, I figured out anything I could about how I could get better, and everything just fell into place in due time. You know, once I was 26, 27, that's when it magically. It's like within a year I magically became successful, but you didn't see the 6, 7 years of me consistently doing all the little things right and doing all the little things day in and day out. So yeah, that would be really what I'd say is just consistency, and just don't let where you're at deter you. Because powerlifting, I feel like it rewards people, like I said, who do the more consistent gradual path. You know, you'll get to where you want to get to. Obviously, genetics and stuff play a role, right? I'm not going to act like that isn't a thing. But I feel like most people give up too soon, and you got to just enjoy the process. And then 4, 5, 6 years down the road, you'll be light years ahead of where you thought you could be. But you can't look too far ahead. You got to just enjoy the moment every year, every month, and just build from there. You know. And I know that's very cliche, but there's really no fancy. There's no fancy way to put becoming strong. You know, it's a process that takes years and years. Obviously, there's ways you can expedite that to a degree, but to get ultimately where you want to get to, there's no real shortcuts, you know? In this day and age, everyone wants to sell you a fucking shortcut. There is no damn shortcuts. Here, buy my ebook about how to add 50 pounds to my deadlift in 2 months. I mean, maybe it might work if you start lifting, but overall, like, there's no gimmicks. It's just longevity and consistency over a long period of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, well said. I agree with that. Now, what can they find you doing outside of the gym? What would be your hobbies? What would you be up to outside of lifting?
So I love hiking. I used to love hiking. Now that I'm 270, I'm not. I get my steps in. A lot of my hobbies I used to have, I don't do anymore because I'm honest with myself. I have to recover. Like I used to do mountain biking when I was younger. I'm not gonna do mountain biking and like fall, smash into a tree and hurt myself if I could prevent it. So I've done mountain biking, like riding my bike in the past. I love riding my bike. Last years I haven't since I got too big. I love enjoying nature. I remember as a kid, I used to collect seashells and agates on the beaches in Oregon. So I kind of love collecting rocks and weird things like that, if that makes sense. Other than that, you know, I just work and then I'll relax. I watch podcasts like yours on YouTube, you know, just to relax at the end of the day. I really want to get into reading a lot more because, especially with how the media is now, like I feel like it's important to still read decent. Like a lot of the stuff you can find is in books, but no one wants to read a book. They want to just click on Google and find the answer, you know. So I'm going to try to get into reading. I actually have wait a second. I bought this book like 5 months ago from Barnes & Noble. It's about kind of just about real estate and how to work in real estate. Because in the future, I want to maybe try to set up a rental or something. You know, just get going some way. I know that there's steps to that, you know. But yeah, that'll be my starting point, is reading that book about real estate and property and stuff, you know.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, there's one thing you might want to look into that's been really useful for me, especially if you like kind of, you know, getting stuff done and listening to podcasts. Just get the Audible app, and you get like 1 credit a month. You get 2 credits to start out, and then you get 1 credit a month, and you can listen to audiobooks on there. And that's been huge for me because it's really.
I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, I love it. It's $15 a month, and you can still buy books on your own that will go to there if you want more. And I'll go through about 3-4 a month, And it's just really a good way to absorb the information while I'm like running or whatever on the treadmill and stuff like that. So that's been pretty fun, and that's useful. Now,
Yeah, definitely.
Where can people find you outside of find you on social media or?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Dan_Griggs. Yeah, I want to get into YouTube. You kind of motivated me, kind of seeing what you've done over the years with YouTube. The biggest struggle is just I'm going to get a laptop soon. I have a decent camera, but it's just the editing kind of seems daunting to me. You know, like I could do like workout vids and then voiceovers like you do with all your videos. But I really want to get to YouTube. But I'll come back. I'll come back on at a later date, and I'll when my YouTube's more. But for now, I don't really do YouTube, but mainly just Instagram, Dan_Griggs. So.
Yeah, it's all daunting at first, and it gets better, and it's still daunting at times for me. But I'm just putting stuff up from time to time and staying consistent with it, just like with lifting. I think that's the key from what I've seen with people. But no, it was great to have you on. Great to talk to you. I know it's been a long time coming, so really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, we'll definitely we'll be on again in the future next year or something. Definitely.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Good luck with the meet in the fall here coming up, and we'll do
Thanks,
it again
Pete.
soon,
Appreciate it.
okay? All right, brother. I'll see you.
Yeah, sounds good. Bye.